Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher Paniotu, the Cap and Capitalize. And today, we are going to be diving into the 4 common financial mistakes and how you can fix them. Now, I had like 26 of these when I was writing this episode, so I whittled it down to the top 4. Now, by no means are these 4 in any chronological order of most to least important or vice versa. So if you are a note-taking type at home, don't think that you have to order this appropriately. Just make sure that you listen, and if you need to go back and write the notes down after I go through all of them, make sure to do so. But don't stress the small stuff. So with that, we are going to dive into the 4 common financial mistakes and how you are going to get out of them. So the first common financial mistake, not investing both for and in retirement. So if you are in your 20s or 30s and you are not saving for retirement, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Now, we all know what that means conceptually, not shooting yourself in the foot, but not saving for retirement and in setting yourself back. But I wanted to put some numbers to it just to get you to understand. So let's say that you were saving $500 a month from now until Judgment Day, not death, retirement. And let's say that one person started at 35 years old and another started at 20 years old. And just to make an assumption, you're going to earn some type of a market return. It's not guaranteed for you compliance people out there, but you get the point. If you were 35 years old and you were saving the $500 a month, you would have approximately $379,494. I guess not approximate, pretty exact. But if you were 20 years old and you were able to compound an additional 15 years, you would have $1,197,810. That is not even close. Obviously, more time equals more help and more assistance to compound, but you've got to start saving as soon as humanly possible. Now, how do you go about doing that? There are a couple ways to go about it. If you have not done so, now, if you are an avid listener to the show, you already know what I am going to say. But for you newbies out there, number 1, welcome to the show. And number 2, you need to make sure if you work somewhere that you are contributing to your company's retirement plan. And if you are not putting in at the bare bones minimum, the match that your company is giving you, you are doing yourself a grave disservice. You're giving up free money. I don't care what the match is, whether it's 50 cents on the dollar up to 3%, or a dollar for dollar up to 4%, or 25 cents on the dollar up to 8%. I've seen that before. Whatever that percentage number is, you need to make sure you're putting in that amount because you are getting free money for that. Now, if you are not working somewhere, you don't have access to a retirement plan, but you obviously are making some income, that's where you could open either an IRA or a Roth IRA. I'm not going to get into the income limits on a Roth IRA because if you make too much, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA, but there are strategies where you can contribute to an individual retirement account and then the next day convert that to a Roth IRA. We call that backdoor Roth IRA. That's getting out of the scope of today's episode. I want to just focus on the surface level of what you need to do to avoid these common mistakes. But bullet point it, if you have access to a retirement plan through your work, put in at least the match. And if you don't, within a IRA or a Roth IRA, you want to put in at least something, and you can put in up to $7,000 for the year of our Lord and Savior 2024. And that actually could be a combination between the two. So if you wanted to do $3,000 in an IRA or $4,000 in a Roth, 6, 1, whatever the case may be, but you can't do 7,000 in each. It has to be like a total amount. Now, as far as the continuation of investing as you get towards retirement, this is kind of a bonus mistake that people make. When people are investing and as you get older, in theory, it is acceptable to get more conservative with your investments. That is a total joke. I can tell you right now, and I could go off on a tangent on the whole concept of risk. That may be for another episode in another time. And in fact, I've actually talked about this in other episodes in Capitalized Past. But when it comes to investing prudently for retirement, you're not really going to want to change up the strategy until I would say you're about 5, 3, for sure 1 year out from retirement. That is not specific investment advice, but that's when your psychology is going to have to change. Forget about the aggressive or conservative side of things. As long as you are investing prudently within a series of long-term investment strategies, whether it's stocks, real estate, privately owned businesses, lending, et cetera, that's where you're going to want to put your focus on. And you combine that with systematically investing on a monthly basis, you are well on your way, to having a successful retirement. Now, the second common financial mistake I see all the time is spending too much money on your house. Now, there's this rule out there called the 28-36 rule, which basically means that your household income your mortgage should be no more than 28% of your gross monthly household income. And then you should also avoid paying more than 36% of your gross monthly income towards all debts, including your mortgage payment. And again, that's a guideline. I'm under the belief of just because you qualify for a home, that doesn't mean you should go and buy it at that price. Even complex financial planning aside, let's just keep it super simple. If you live well within your means and you take anything left over and you invest it for the long haul, in the long run, assuming you're not investing in just like really bad companies, you're going to be better off. And you're probably going to be able to retire sooner. But a lot of these people, what they do is they take all of their hard-earned wealth and then they dump it all into one asset, illiquid, which is your home. And someday, I get it. You pay off the mortgage, you free up the cash flow on that side of things, you get a little bit of a deduction with the mortgage interest every single year, which is a nice little write-off for taxes. I get all of the reasons why people are so gung-ho on real estate. But when you dump everything into your home, you're living for the box. And I don't want to live for the box. I don't want you to live for the box. I want you to live for a lot more than that. And let's say down the road, you want to buy the home of your dreams after you've compounded your wealth and your wealth is paying you. It's not necessarily your employment income that is paying you. So your investments could pay for your dream home, not you. How crazy is that? But a lot of people go and overblow it. Now, as far as how to calculate how much you can afford, I actually wrote down a couple tips and tricks for you, and actually more than tips and tricks, a step-by-step on what you're going to need to do to understand how much home you can afford. And again, just because you can afford this, I wouldn't say that is the tip-top amount that you should go and buy, but it gives you an idea of what that ceiling should be. So number one, you look at your pay stub, and you're going to want to calculate your monthly gross income. So let's just assume for easy math, you're making $50,000 a year, so $4,166.67 a month. Glad I don't have to say that 10 times fast. After you do that, the second step is going to be multiplying that number by 28%. So in this case, that's $1,166.67. Then you're going to take that number and you're going to multiply it by 12. So in this case, it's about $14,000 a year. And then the last step, this is going to take a little bit more research, and you're going to need to utilize a financial calculator. Now, there's a ton of options out there. In fact, a lot of them are free. I use an HP 12C calculator, both within my practice as well as sometimes on the show. I'm not going to use it right now. Conceptually, though, if you go online and type in free HP 12C calculator, you're going to be able to use it. I actually talk about in my course how to use these calculators appropriately. So strongly recommend, if you have not looked at that, give it a look. But back to the task at hand, once you've gotten to this point, it's really going to come down to how much you decide to put down on your home as a lump sum, because that's how we're going to be able to figure basically how much mortgage you can afford. And then you work backwards into, okay, how much is the total value of the home? That's where I can start. So I'm just going to make this up. If you're paying down $14,000 a year for a 30-year fixed mortgage at about 8%, which is, as of this recording, what interest rates are for a home, your starting mortgage would be a lump sum of $157,608. So if you want to put 20% down on that home, so basically that means, the remaining 80%, that's what that mortgage is. That means you're looking at a home at a price range of about $200,000 or under. There's a lot that I could dive into with that. The first thing, why did I say 20%? There's a thing called PMI, private mortgage insurance. It's not going to kill you, but it's kind of annoying if you don't, if you can afford to pay this thing down and you don't. It's just kind of an unnecessary expense. And then also, there's something to be said about having some cushion and some cushion of equity in your home. There's obviously exceptions, like for those of you that have served our country, thank you for your service. If you go through the VA, sometimes you can put 0% down on the home, which absolutely blows my mind. But the more equity you have in the home, the better, because if something happened to you and you needed some equity to pull out of your home for whatever reason, you've got that cushion. Heaven forbid if you put next to nothing down and then real estate prices pull back, now you're underwater. Now you need something from your home, but you can't do anything with it because you actually, the mortgage is worth more than the actual home itself. Yikes. So that's why I use the 20%. That's more than enough cushion most of the time, and you avoid that gnarly little PMI tax. But, you've got to understand with mortgages, interest rates change all the time. And so you've got to be on top of it as far as what that interest rate is. If you do not have a quality mortgage broker in your back pocket, look one up and give them a call, get information. And once you have that information and you've built that relationship, make sure that you're chatting with them periodically. Because if you're looking to buy a new home or a condo or a duplex, apartment, whatever, you're going to want to act really quickly. Because if you're figuring all this out, when you see that dream home or that first home that you're looking into, and you haven't gone through all those steps, chances are there's going to be 6 or 7 people that are light years ahead of you. So start building those relationships early on. That's kind of a little bonus qualitative piece of advice. But as long as you know what the interest rates are and you understand the steps of how to calculate the mortgage and how much of a mortgage you can afford, that is going to be extremely helpful for you if you are looking for a home. And what I like to do is say, okay, if that's that 28% value, maybe knock it down to 25 or 22%, because then you've got even more cushion. It's all about cash flow. I'm not a fan of cash is king, is cash is trash. I'm not a fan of those terms. I can tell you, running a business, and anyone that you know that runs a business, or if you run a business, cash flow is always king. Now, before we get to the next two, and I guess the last two, common financial mistakes and how to fix them, I'm going to take a brief break because it is the time, for today's sponsor of the episode. So my marketing team is going to roll the clip. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and I will be right back continuing with these mistakes.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotu, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back from the sponsor of today's episode. I missed you dearly, and I want to keep chugging with these last two common financial mistakes. And the last one is going to be extremely interesting and near and dear to my heart. But before we get to the last one, the third common financial mistake I see all the time is that people spend excessively and frivolously. So it's interesting to me how, for whatever reason, a lot of people overlook the importance of budgeting. And once they've budgeted, understanding the difference between what they make minus what they spend, and then obviously what to do with anything left over, if you have anything left over. And what people also don't realize from a planning standpoint, I actually tell my clients this daily. I don't care how much you are worth. I don't care if you're worth 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million. Obviously, 100 million gets a little bit squirrely. But the point is, I don't care what someone is worth, as long as you understand the expense side of things and you know what those expenses are, like the back of your hand, that's where planning starts. And let me explain that a little bit. When I have clients come in, one of the first questions I'm going to ask them is, how much are you making net per month? So if you're working for someone, after your 401k contribution, insurance, all that fun stuff, what is hitting your checking account on a monthly basis? And then after that, what are your expenses? What is your mortgage? What is your credit card payment per month? What are your utilities? What is your internet? What goes into your credit card spending every single month? Are you spending the right credit or using the right credit card on certain expenses if you've got points or whatever the case may be? And the reason why that's super critical is, number one, if you have anything left over, we call that gap money in my book. That's where you take that profit or gap money and you start investing it prudently for either long-term needs such as retirement or, let's say buying an investment property, whatever the case may be, or some intermediate or immediate needs. Maybe you're saving up for a couch. Maybe you're saving up for a computer. Maybe you're saving up to do a remodel on your home. That's a shout out to the Panayotu Powerhouse. We are doing that this year. That'll be loads of fun. But the whole point is you want to be mission critical with that excess money that you are making above and beyond your expenses. What people also don't realize is with expenses, that is the perfect place to start, especially if you are closer to or in retirement. Now, if you're in retirement, that's pretty cut and dry because you need to figure out really quickly how much you're spending every month, and then you need to work backwards on how much you have in your portfolio. You need to make sure your investments are invested appropriately to maintain that expense and standard of living that you have now that you are retired. If you are growing your net worth, or you're at what we call the hump, right? You haven't quite retired yet, but you got a couple years of revving the engine and saving up whatever's left, the fourth quarter, if you will, of retirement or of pre-retirement. That's going to give you a really good idea of, okay, once I'm there, how much do I need to take out of my portfolio? Very similar to those that are retired. But then the difference is you can start to quarterback and plan, if you're really young, what the cost of living is going to be at a certain inflation rate. So by the time you get to that point, what are your expenses? But then if you're at that hump phase, depending, and that's really, I don't know, 5 years between almost retired and 5 years from now, that's where you're going to be able to figure out, okay, I'm not retired yet. I need to have certain dollars set aside that I can't necessarily risk, but maybe I'm trying to squeeze the blood out of the turnip and earn a little bit more return. Maybe I can start compounding some guaranteed income. I could start to utilize some alternative investments if I haven't done so already. Okay, and then anything left over, I can still invest for the long haul, because anything that is left over, that's what I want to grow, in this case within the market, or whatever long-term investment floats your boat. So if you don't know what you're spending, and if you are spending excessively and frivolously, yeah, the surface level advice, you got to knock it off. But on a more serious note, you need to really buckle down and understand where you are spending. There are a ton of apps out there where you can go and put in all of your expenses. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of these apps, simply because I think technology can be a gift and a curse. And more often than not, especially in the world of finance, we've tested a lot of these applications, and they're not all what they are cracked up to be, but they can be a really good starting point on getting you to understand where you're spending your money. Once you crack down on that and understand that, hey, like if you're not saving and you need to clean out a lot of those bad expenses, well, now you're finally making something every month. And then once you are making something on a monthly basis, if you haven't retired, you want to be mission critical on where that money goes, because let's face it, the more you invest today, the sooner you're going to be able to retire. Pretty cut and dry. Now, the last common financial mistake, and this one is near and dear to my heart, is not having a plan. So I first want to take a trip down memory lane. And for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, or you're relatively new to the podcast, I'm going to give you my background a little bit. So I had my first investment account opened when I was 10 years old. Okay, it was a UGMA or UTMA account, which is a miner's account. They're not as popular today, but they can be used for the right child. And I remember I read bits and pieces of Ben Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor. Didn't absorb a whole heck of a lot of it. And frankly, I kind of cheated in the fact that it was Jason Zweig's translated version, which is much more modern and in much more regular English. Because the original, I mean, it is written, what, in the 30s or 40s? And you can tell, and not a lot of it is as applicable today. But the whole point was that book is considered by many as the Bible of investing. And I get why people don't have a plan, because there really isn't a framework out there that gets people to systematically understand what they need to do with every dollar they make for the rest of their life. But Ben Graham did that on the investment side of things. And so, for me, one of my big things is when I left the big firms is I said, okay, I know what isn't out there. I know that there isn't some planning framework that I've found that is as popular as Ben Graham, Warren Buffett's teacher. So I'm going to start doing research out there to see if there is one. Now, to my fortune, there wasn't one, and that's why I wrote my book. That's why I created my course. And that is really the purpose of why I'm doing this show in the first place. I'm trying to gift back as much as I can in the form of my knowledge that I've been blessed with early on, so that as I grow through my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, 60s, and so on, I can start to compound that goodwill at a much earlier rate than a lot of these people that I've interviewed, where that is actually their number one regret. They they've been keeping their gifts to themselves for so long, and now they feel like they have to catch up on blessing it back to their fans. That's what I'm doing, and I'm just getting an early start on it. Now, when it comes to the whole idea of planning versus investing, because people get really confused about this, the best analogy I can use is football. Now, if you don't watch football, you're kind of out of luck, but this is the easiest example that I use. So I'm in Tacoma, Washington, and that is close to the Seattle Seahawks. For those of you that are football fans, you know that. And before I talk about the specifics of this analogy, when you have the ball on offense, what is the goal? The purpose is to score. It's to score a touchdown, okay? You can kick a field goal, but like you want to score a touchdown. Now, every team out there has a different way of going about that. So, for example, when Tom Brady was playing for the Patriots and the Buccaneers, arguably the greatest quarterback or football player of all time, guess what? Their primary goal was to pass it. Now, back in the day with the Seahawks, Marshawn Lynch was the guy. I mean, he was, at the time, arguably the best running back in the NFL. And so when you needed those extra yards, you're going to give him the rock and he's going to run it. So the core strategy of the Seahawks, of the overall purpose to score a touchdown, was to run the ball. That was their core strategy. Now, in the NFL, you can't do the same play every single time. These guys understand what's going to happen if you do that every single time. So then what happened with the Seahawks is they surrounded that core strategy of running the ball with what I call satellite strategy. So when Russell Wilson played for the Seahawks, maybe he would run out of the backfield. Maybe he would dish one to Jimmy Graham over the middle. He'd throw a bomb to Tyler Lockett, like a deep ball. So he had all of these satellite strategies. The Seahawks had all of these satellite strategies of passing it, surrounded by the main core strategy of running the ball for the overall purpose of scoring a touchdown. Now, how does that relate to investing and planning? A lot of people get confused because they think planning is the long ball to Tyler Lockett, or the running out of the backfield of Russell Wilson, or the little dish off of Jimmy Graham, like some of the sexy one-off things. No, the plan is the overall core strategy of scoring a touchdown. And then the investment side of things are the ancillary steps of what I took. Remember, investments come and go, but your strategy should continue to remain constant. And once you understand that, my friends, is true, comprehensive, personal financial planning. So, I'm going to conclude the fourth and final mistake with a call to action to you. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, totally fine. You're going to want to make sure you are not confusing your steps in your convoluted steps of your investment acumen with a comprehensive planning process, like I was just talking about. If you work with a planner or an advisor, for sure a planner, but an advisor, I want you to grill them on that process. And if you understand, if you are gathering that they understand the planning process of things, right? Use that football analogy, then you're in the right spot. But if you ask your advisor or your planner about the planning framework that they have, and it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that that's not their original idea, you're going to figure out a couple things. Number one, they're probably not thinking for themselves. They're thinking, or they are a mouthpiece for the big firm that they work for, or even the small firm that they work for. But then the big point that I'm getting at is you're going to want to find a new planner or advisor. Because I don't know about you, I don't want someone managing my money that doesn't have a concrete plan for every dollar in my portfolio. So that does it for today's episode on the 4 common financial mistakes and how to fix them. I hope you got a ton of value from that. This is a shorter episode, but sometimes the shortest are the sweetest. If you have any questions about today's episode, if you are interested in the Capitalized books or courses, if you want to be more intertwined in the Capitalized brand, if you wanted to become a guest on the show, head on over to capitalizedpodcast.com. My team and I look at inquiries every single day. And then lastly, if you have personal financial planning questions that you would want answered on the show, or if you just want to run a question by me and say, hey, Chris, what do you think about XYZ? You have every right to shoot me an email, chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as humanly possible. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Christopher A. Paniotu, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing. Take care.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Different types of investments and/or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you're required to take a required minimum distribution in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Roth IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59.5 or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. Christopher Paniotu is a registered representative with, and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial.